April. Welcome everyone. I'm going to pass over to Ms. Robertson for the housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that the public section of the meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. Could all attendees please mute their microphone when they are not speaking? I will now do a roll call and would ask that all members confirm their attendance when their name is called so that this is clear in the recording and can also be recorded in the minute. Councillor Gregg, Chair.
Present.
June Brown.
Present.
Councillor Cook.
Good morning, present.
Hussein Pathwa.
Present.
We have apologies from Sandy Reid. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, moving on to the agenda at 1.1. Are there any declarations of interest or transparency statements? Right, there are none. Item 2.1 is on exempt business, of which there is none on the agenda, in which case we can move on to 3.1, the minute of our previous meeting, 28th of November 2023. Are there any problems with the accuracy of that minute? Any questions or problems with the minute of the previous meeting? Are members content to approve that as an accurate record? Okay, yep, that's approved. Thank you. Then the business planner. Are there any questions on the business planner? I think Paul Mitchell will help us with this one. But are there Hussein?
Thank you, Chair. And can I just apologise, Chair, for health reasons? I may need to nip out for a moment or two every now and then during the call. I apologise for that.
No problem.
Just a question on the planner with regard to the Navigator project. There's mention earlier on that project was deferred until August 22. That's understandable. Later on, and if I'm reading this correctly, it shows that we're now looking to the future of that project. And I'm just wondering, just putting it out there for comment, there almost seems to be a step missing in that in terms of how do we get to the project is up and running to we're now looking at the future of that project. And I was just wondering, perhaps not to put more work on officers, but is there a way in which we could have a service update to see where are we or why are we at the point where we're now looking at the future? Is there anything that we need to be aware of in terms of that? And what does that potential future look like? And what's the rationale behind that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think that's a very reasonable request. I think usually Simon Rayner would be able to help with this. Don't see Simon's name in the list. Who would be able to help us with that question from Hussein? Who can volunteer? Paul, are you volunteering?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. There's no update from Simon, but what I can do is after this, I'll go and speak to him and get a service update and get him to put something in writing, as Hussein had just asked for.
That would be helpful. I think we would want that in a relatively brisk time frame.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that this is an important, welcome project. It's there to provide protection, reassurance. So it is an important one. So are you content with that?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. And your hand is still up. Any further queries?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much. On to John Cook.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry that I'm having difficulty with my raise hand function. I'm clicking on it and it doesn't seem to be working, but it was just on the PSIP update which we've got on the June meeting. Just wanted to flag that, can we have some reference to the GP visioning exercise in that?
Yeah. So could we have some feedback? Would that be acceptable?
Yeah.
Paul, that's,
yeah.
We will. Okay, that's good. Excellent. I think that's all with the business planner. Great. Thank you, everyone. And I think we are requested to approve the business planner otherwise. So are we content with the business planner? Yeah. Yes, all are agreed. That takes us on to the board assurance and escalation framework. I would like to invite Martin Allen, if you'd like to introduce this paper, if that's possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so the committee have before it the annual review of the IJB's board assurance and escalation framework. The framework describes the regulatory framework of the IJB to support its vision, values and principles within which this committee will work. A key element of the assurance framework is the risk management system, whose outputs contribute significantly to the assurance on key risks to objectives. And the appendices to the framework kind of illustrate the landscape in which the IJB operates. The committee performs a key role of reviewing and reporting on the effectiveness of the governance structures in place and on the quality of the assurances the board receives. The framework was formally approved by the IJB back in 2016 and was last reviewed by this committee in February 2023. The 2024 review has been undertaken and the revised version is attached as Appendix A to the report. The main changes to the framework are in relation to minor housekeeping updates relating to changes to names of posts in the senior leadership team. It's proposed that the framework will continue to be reviewed on an annual basis. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I start off? Yeah, it's really helpful, very detailed report. There's a very strong, coherent structure there. Could I ask about, on page 36, there's mention there at the service level of engagement, consultation, working together, service level participation with partners. I mean, is it possible to have a little more information on what that involves? And I wondered if it relates to further on page 39, there's mention of assurance through working with partners, and I mean there's quite a long list there, and I'm just trying to get more of an understanding of how that partnership work operates, because I think that is an important part of the assurance and escalation framework. I mean, there's mention there of various organisations, internal and external, which would be providing support and assurance. So how does that work with as service level participation?
Okay, thank you. So is it page 39 that you're referring to, or?
Yes, 39 has got a kind of a list, and then I was trying to relate that back to page 36, just to try and tie together the various partners, and I'm not sure if that was a helpful and appropriate thing to do, but it did seem that there was that there was a fit, that where there is that integration where we're trying to work together. Would that be a valid thought to have?
Yeah, I think so. And looking at the list and then trying to kind of refer that back to what your question is around service level involvement. I suppose there's a number of different groups across the whole system in health and social care that members of the partnership are involved in at a service level, that kind of operational level, as well as more strategic level as well. So those kind of groups may well have input from those external sources of assurance that are listed on page 39 through their work. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's helpful. And otherwise, so relating back just to page 36, could you give us some more information on the meaning at that service level of engagement, participation, and the empowerment strategy? There is mention there of community partners, service government forums. What would be? Could you give us some examples of those community partners and services, and how they help to work at service level?
Yeah, I'm just, well, see Alison, she's put her hand up. I was going to ask if Alison wanted to come at this point because she may well be able to provide a little bit more detail on that specific question. Thank you.
Yeah. Alison McLeod, yeah.
Thanks, Martin, and thanks, Martin. Yeah, so we have our community, well, there is a community empowerment engagement strategy, and we have our own guidance for public engagement, and that's all services use that. But I think probably the best example to give, if you're looking for an example, is around about our commissioning work. So when we're re-tendering and when we're thinking about recommissioning a contract, as you recall, 99% of our social care services are commissioned externally. So as part of that tendering process, we'll review the service delivery and we'll involve service users. So we engage and consult with people who are using the services at the minute to understand their experiences of it and any thoughts around what any future service commissioning should look like. So we usually also engage with the market in terms of various providers, again, to see what kind of service provision they're providing elsewhere. So I think that's probably something that happens on a routine, regular basis. So that's probably one of the biggest and I think best examples of engagement with our communities and their participation in designing and delivering social care services.
Okay, that's great. That's very helpful. I mean, I was also wondering if hosted services, for example, would fall into that category. And I mean, we also we try to work and relate to other IJBs, which seems to be a potential opportunity for that kind of developing service level understanding. So,
yeah, absolutely. The Grampian whole system approach is pretty constant as well. That's again, there's lots of examples of services engaging with other services in other health and social care partnerships, and indeed with services and directorates within NHS Grampian.
Great, thanks very much. All helps to provide that assurance that we're looking for. June Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So my question relates to new legislation that came into play yesterday. So we've got our health and care staffing legislation as of the 1st of April is now in force. And I didn't really see it reflected through this performance framework. And obviously the IJB will going to be held to account by Scottish Government in relation to this. And, the whole part of it is about understanding our risk and mitigation. So I'm just keen to understand a bit more if that has been thought of and is part of this, or is it kind of missing? Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks
for the...
Yeah, thanks, June. Yeah, I think it's a good question, a good challenge. We have had talks around this. I mean, one of the things we want to do is make sure that when reports come forward to the IJB and to this committee and to the Clinical Care and Governance Committee, that report authors have considered that legislation. Currently in the template there is a section on legal implications, but it's maybe just fleshing out a wee bit and just saying, for example, the Staffing Act that's come in on the 1st of April. So there's that element as well. I think within the Act we obviously have to report what we're doing around it as well. So I think to answer your question, yes, it probably is missing, but that's not to say that it could be added into future versions of the framework to kind of capture that.
Okay, thanks very much. John Cook.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that, I mean, I don't want to put John Forsyth on the spot, but in terms of the staffing issue, clearly we've had an issue in terms of being able to recruit folk. Is that, if you just can't, if you're trying to recruit but you can't recruit, is that a defence in terms of the Act?
For yourself, Through yourself, Chair, I have to admit that I'm not expert on the new Act yet, but what I can do is go and look into that and get, I can circulate that around the members of the committee, the response to that, although I suspect that some other people on the call may be more expert than I am on that.
Cool. Thanks. June, you want to come back in?
I can maybe help and answer John's question. So, John, no, you have to evidence your mitigation. So, what are you doing to provide safe and appropriate staffing? And you have to evidence that, and that will go back quarterly reporting back to Scottish Government. So, there's going to be a whole process needing to be developed within the IJBs and the boards from a social care and a healthcare perspective, and how we manage this collectively. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Hussein.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just take you back to page 32, 33, where it says that the board has, it talks about self-assessment for the board, which is obviously important for our own governance and reassurance. And I guess the question is, because I couldn't find this anywhere, when was the last time we did that? Or do we do that, or when do we do that?
That's a very good question. Any feedback on that question?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't have a specific date, but what we can do is we can check. I've got something in the back of my mind thinking that has been undertaken, but I can't pinpoint when that was. But we could find that out and let the committee know.
Because it appears to mention a 3-yearly cycle, or a minimum 3-yearly cycle. It's referenced there, and the only reason it's come to mind, Chair, is because we've just done an exercise with the NHSG Population Health Committee. So when I saw that in the report, I thought I couldn't actually see that in the planner or anywhere, and I just wondered, I wouldn't want us to fall foul of our duties if we didn't do what we were meant to do. But thank you.
Useful to raise that, and Martin has noted that. Thank you very much. So, Hussein, anything, your hand's still up, anything further, Hussein?
No, I think there is an issue with the raise hand feature. It seems to work better if you use the keyboard rather than the mouse, but no, nothing else from me.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks for that. Right, if that's all the questions, we've got recommendations there at page 14. Are members content to approve the recommendations? Everybody's happy with that? Okay, grand. 5.1 is the strategic risk register, which again, Martin Allen is leading on. Do you wish to introduce it, Martin, or just wait? Just any questions? Okay, yep.
I'll just quickly introduce it, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
The report presents to the committee the updated risk appetite statement and the strategic risk register. The risk appetite statement is intended to be helpful to the board in decision making and to enable members to consider the risks to organisational goals of not taking decisions as well as taking them. IGB members held a workshop in January this year and considered the risk appetite statement and agreed that the committee review the statement at the midpoint of financial year 24-25 to sense check the board's appetite to risk at that point, given the budgetary and financial pressures. So that is scheduled into the business planner for that. The risk appetite statement is attached at Appendix A to the report. And then moving on to the risk register, at its last meeting in November, the committee noted the outcomes of the deeper dive undertaken in October on the 2 very high risks and agreed to lower the risk ratings for these 2 risks from very high to high. At the workshop in January, the members present discussed the strategic risks, and during the discussion, members requested that reference be made to the public consultation undertaken on the primary care vision work. So that's been added in, and the register has been amended with additions to risk 1 and 6 in relation to that. The members also noted that the audit on hosted services, which has recently been undertaken, means that the outcomes of the audit will allow the risk on that specific risk to be updated once the committee has considered the audit, which is on the agenda for today's meeting. Through my role, I've met with all the risk owners to review the risks and take into account the discussions held at the workshop in January. The updated version of the risk register forms Appendix B to the support. And then finally, the strategic risk register is also considered by the senior leadership team on a quarterly basis. And through this process, no new risks have been recommended to be added to the risk register, and no risks have been recommended for de-escalation. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. No new risks, but quite a considerable amount of ongoing risks are. So questions, John Cook.
I hate to be a pedant, but the impact and likelihood axes appear to be wrongly labelled.
Yeah. So
sorry about that.
Yeah, no. I think it's a good point, and I thought I'd already fixed that, but if I've submitted the wrong version of it, but I have gone in and done that. So apologies if the version in front of the committee today is not the updated version, but I have amended that.
I apologise for asking the question because it's blindingly obvious what it means.
Yeah.
It's just that when I was reading through it, it just kind of struck me. I did have a sensible question, or slightly more sensible, which is on. Sorry, just trying to find my annotations. Boom, 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 boom. Oh yeah, it's page 70 on the financial failure risk. I'm not saying it should be very high. I'm just asking the question, should it be very high rather than just high? Can we just keep an eye on that?
Yeah. Sorry, we did review this and we left it at high. You know, it's been high for quite some time now, and with the work that we've done with the MTFF, you know, in the last couple of months, we're happy that it is high, but obviously it'll be reviewed regularly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that if you look at the stuff that's come out of Audit Scotland, for example, in terms of increasing demand and financial pressures, it's just one that kind of worries me a bit. I'm happy. I'm not saying it should be very high. I'm happy with you guys putting it where you've put it, but it's just kind of like, yeah, it's one that worries me a bit.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
I think there's some comment in the comment section which maybe just kind of alludes to what you're suggesting, John, around that. But as Paul said, you know, we will continue to monitor this on a quarterly basis at SLT, but also the catch-up meetings myself and the risk owners have as well. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that. Hussein Patwa.
Thank you very much. I suppose it's something that's just on the back of John's question there, and it's got me thinking. You know, we're reviewing these risks on a regular basis, and we put the risks into the report. So in terms of the time frame, we're looking at that risk through a 6 month time frame or a 12-month time frame, you know, as may be the case. And you've just said, and I'm quite assured by that, that you also look at this on a quarterly basis. But just in terms of the finance, given the discussions that the IJB have recently had at the budget just last week and in the run-up to the budget, and we know that we're approaching very inclement financial times over the coming years, I'm just wondering if you could maybe provide some assurance and maybe a bit of narrative about how we qualify that risk over the longer term and how that fits into the reporting that we do so that we're aware of the risk at this current point in time and up to, say, for example, the first half of the financial year, but also how do we put in there somewhere that we're also cognizant that, you know, there could be substantial changes in the future, and the actions that we're currently undertaking now are all contributing to that very high risk potential further down the line, whether that's a year, 2 years, or 3 years down the line.
I think on the reporting side, I could maybe kick off there. So obviously this committee receives the strategic risk register twice a year. At the workshop in January, it was agreed that the risk appetite statement would effectively be in front of the committee twice a year as well. So that hopefully will provide a little bit of assurance around that. The IGB also has an annual review of the strategic risk register, and there's workshop, the IGB annual workshop, as well as the quarterly review by senior leadership teams. So I think there's a fair bit of governance around it, and opportunities, I suppose, to like we're doing just now, kind of question around the risk rating of specific risks. So I mean, hopefully that provides a little bit of assurance to the committee members that the opportunities are there to have the kind of discussions around the risk rating. And I don't know, Paul, if you've got anything specific on risk 2 you want to come in and.
Yeah, for the MTFF, it was set last week. We've set the budget for year 1, obviously, but then years 2 to 7 are included in the MTFF. So we actually forecast forward all the pressures that we've got based on what we know just now. So we're forecasting a balanced budget for the next, is it 7 years, you know, so all other things being equal will be balanced. So that's where we're kind of mitigating the risks there by saying, fine, year 1 is X amount. We then forecast forward year 2, 3, and 4, etc. And then during our regular reviews at the SLT, we forecast in any increases or any specific pressures into the MTFF. And if it does kind of flag up a pressure, that's when the risk register will be adjusted.
Thank you. I think, yeah, no, I can absolutely assure you that I am very much assured by what I've heard today and also what we have in the report. I think my only comment would be that perhaps we need to slightly tighten up the link between what we see in the risk statement to the MTFF and the kind of longer term prevailing risk, if that makes any sense, because unless it was just me not reading it very well, I couldn't really see that longer term narrative in there, just so that we're absolutely clear that that is very much something that's going to be on our radar. But I absolutely do take assurance from what you've just said.
That's something we can, myself and Paul can take away and look at the narrative in that risk specifically.
Grand, thank you. Can I just ask what kind of a factor in risk, particularly I think in risk 2, is the reporting from the NHS Grampian board? The chief executive report from March was anticipating unprecedented scale of reduction. I think 77 million was mentioned, and I think that's coming back to the NHS board in April. Just wondering what's the relation on our risk factor 2 of that situation, Paul.
Yeah, for 24-25, we've already built into the MTFF any savings that were passed on to us. So in effect, what we got this year's budget was a flat cash 0 uplift. So that was all built in. There's no adjustment yet for any bigger savings or any share of the savings. It might be passed on to the IGBs, but we haven't had any word of that yet.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, there's also mention in the report the Q2 5.4 million overspend, which is being addressed weekly. So it's reassuring to know that there's that very very frequent scrutiny of the expenditure side. So very challenging times. Any other questions on the strategic risk register? Anything else? We content with that? Okay. So strategic risk register has recommendations at page 56. Are members content to agree those recommendations? Approved? Yes. Grand. Okay. Thank you very much, Martin. We move on to the external audit strategy. I think this is a report from Anne MacDonald.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
So I'm Anne MacDonald from Audit Scotland. Also on the call is my colleague Michael Oliphant. Excuse me. So yes, this is our plan for the 23-24 audit, and it takes into consideration the requirements of Audit Scotland's Code of Audit Practice, auditing standards, and our findings from last year's audit. The content of the plan, you'll hopefully remember, is very much in line with the plan that we brought to the committee last year. It's covering our responsibilities in respect of the audit of the IGB's accounts, and it's also our wider scope responsibilities under Audit Scotland's Code of Audit Practice. So in Exhibit 1 on page 93 of your papers, we set out the materiality levels for the audit. So this is the level of error or misstatement we think would affect decision making by the users of the accounts, and it's therefore the level of misstatement potentially permitted without it impacting on our audit opinion. So for 23-24, we've set an overall materiality level of 8.4 million, and this is based on 2% of gross expenditure. In practice, any misstatements are discussed with officers as the audit progresses, and where appropriate, they're generally amended. But just for completeness, we do report all identified misstatements to you, which are individually over 250,000. During the audit, we undertake sampling and other verification procedures to gather assurances for all the material balances in the accounts. But in addition to that, auditing standards require us to identify risks of material misstatement in the accounts and focus particular attention on those areas. So with that in mind, with reference to Exhibit 2 on page 94 of your papers, we've identified here one significant risk of material misstatement, and this relates to the risk of misstatement due to fraud caused by management override of controls. This considers the potential and incentive for management to manipulate financial reporting. And just for your benefit, this risk is prescribed by auditing standards, and therefore it appears in all our audit plans. On page 96, we also identify two other areas of audit focus. The first of these relates to improvements required in the working papers package, which is provided to audit alongside the unaudited accounts, and more generally in relation to the final accounts process. We mention this one particularly given the upcoming retirement of the Chief Finance Officer, and therefore changes in the arrangements that will be happening quite soon. The second item that we identify there relates to the assurances we seek on the robustness of the partners' ledgers, and this is really because the partners' ledgers are what form the basis of the accounts, so therefore we look for routine assurances each year in relation to how that information comes together. On page 97, this sets out what we consider our wider scope risks, and here we will be considering the financial sustainability of the IJB, and also we'll be looking at the progress being made in the implementation of the board's workforce strategy. So very interested in your comments earlier on the agenda in relation to both of those matters. And finally on page 100, that sets out the, on paragraph, yes, it is page 100, sets out the proposed timetable for this year's audit. And there we also state what the audit fee for the 23-24 audit, which is set at £33,360. And just as a reminder to the committee, this framework is set by Audit Scotland nationally across all our sectors, so it's not something that we set particularly locally unless there's an adjustment to that fee. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for those comments. It's very good to see the very robust and thorough structure in place from Audit Scotland. Are there any questions from members? Are we content to note that report? The report noted as required? Yeah. Okay, the report's noted. Thank you very much for that. Chair. Thank you. We then move on to 6.2, which is the internal audit plan from Jamie Dale.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
So
Jamie.
I'm here today to present and seek approval for the draft internal audit plan for 24-27. Where it is a 3-year plan, I welcome comments on the whole report. My focus will be on the next year, so 24-25. The plan will be reassessed each year as we always look to have a 3-year rolling programme of work. The work for this started back in October. And in terms of plan development, the document sets out the consultation process that I went through, including discussion with stakeholders, review of previous work, engagement with other assurance providers, and benchmarking against other IJBs. The result is what I think is a very balanced plan. I think it's one that addresses the core functions of assurance, but also has wider pieces of value-adding work. So here today to answer any questions and hopefully receive your approval.
Great. Thank you very much, Jamie, for that report. Members have any questions on this internal audit plan? I think it's very straightforward. I think everything's there. Happy to. Are we content to approve the audit plan for 24-27? Yeah, everybody's okay with that, right? John Cook.
Yeah, sorry, and it's I'm totally happy with it. It's just the kind of the benchmarking issue. So, and actually, maybe this is a question I should have asked on the previous item in terms of Fran MacDonald. Can we just be assured that we're kind of doing the right thing compared to other IJBs? I'm sure we are. I've got total confidence in our officers, but it'd be good to know that we're doing the right thing in comparison to others.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for myself to say, in terms of benchmarking, I do look at the plans for other IJBs across Scotland and work closely with other chief internal auditors. And again, we are aligned in our areas of review, while still being specific to Aberdeen City.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Thanks very much. So are we content to approve the recommendations for that report? Yeah, all approved. Thank you very much. So we can move on to 6.3, which is again Jamie Dale, which is the update report. Just quite brief. Any comments from yourself, Jamie?
Just a standard introduction, Chair, to say this is the update report that provides the committee with updates on the delivery of our audit plan, as well as the follow-up of internal audit recommendations. With regards to the actual contents of the report, you will see from the progress section that we continue to close off the audit reviews, with one presented later today to committee. With regards to the follow-up of recommendations, as at the 31st of December, there were no recommendations outstanding, again showing good work by management with closing off the actions. So no, thank you and welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you. A very positive, condensed report there. Any questions from members? Can we agree the recommendations on 6.3? Yep, that's approved. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jamie. And on to 6.4, which is again Jamie Dale on hosted services. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. So one individual audit report going to committee today. As with previous committees, I will provide a short introduction and then stop for questions. We've also got representatives from the service who can provide updates from an operational perspective. IJB hosted services. The objective of this audit was to obtain assurance that the IJB has adequate arrangements in place to monitor the performance of services hosted on its behalf. Overall, I've been able to take reasonable assurance over what is seen as a moderate risk area. The report details out the assurance assessment, including one pocket of major risk concerning governance arrangements. Recommendations have been made to address this and other findings in the review, which management have agreed to and will implement. Internal audit will follow up on the recommendations as they become due and report back to this committee. Thank you and welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. There's mention there of the benefits of putting in place a schedule for in order to, I guess, monitor across IGB reporting. Just wondering just wondering what that involves. What would the schedule involve? Is that within a certain time frame that they would be reporting back, or what?
Thank you, Chair. Maybe hand over to management to answer that one. I think Alison's on the call.
Alison, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, basically we're trying to make the governance structures a bit more robust. We had planned to do this a couple of years ago, but never quite got round to implementing it. So yeah, absolutely, we're looking to have detailed SLAs with the detail of what the services are delivering and how we're going to measure whether they are delivering what we need them to do or not. Also, in terms of the budget that's allocated to them, and the schedule that we're referring to there is around about the timescale of reporting. Obviously, hosted services includes all 3 health and social care partnerships in Grampian, so it's not just the city IGB that we would be reporting to. So that schedule would be a case of when in the cycle we would be looking to bring update reports on the SLAs for each of the hosted services to each of the 3 IGBs. So it's going to be a pretty detailed schedule from that point of view.
Okay, thank you. And I imagine that that there would be a will to press on with actioning this sooner rather than later. Would that be accurate? Yeah.
Yes, indeed. As I say, we've had a couple of attempts at this. Adam Caldwell's, who the then Deputy Chief Executive of NHS Grampian, had started this back in, I think, maybe 2019. And we didn't quite get that implementation over the line. And then we had another stab at it in 2021. But, just COVID never really gave us the capacity to enable us to do that. So all 3 IGBs and all 3 staff around about this in the 3 partnerships are committed to making sure we get this over the line now. And the audit report is a fantastic driver for us to do that.
Yeah, that's great. It's good to know that there's a sense of urgency there. That's very welcome. And that willingness to work together. That's great. Thanks very much for that. June?
Thanks, Chair. Alison, I think you've kind of answered my question anyway in relation to working with the other IGBs, and I was thinking more in the context of mental health and learning disabilities and that health space and the responsibility of that. Obviously, being hosted by City, and just that engagement with other partnerships, which I think you've already answered in that question. So thank you.
Grand. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Can we agree the recommendations for 6.4, recommendations on page 127? All agreed? All approved? Grand, lovely. Thank you. 7.1 is the quarterly 3 delivery plan update, which is Callum Leask's report.
Yes,
Callum.
good morning. Yes,
thanks.
good morning. Nice to see everyone. So the purpose of this report is to provide assurance to the committee in relation to the partnerships delivery plan, and it's recommended that the committee note the information within. So I guess the committee should be relatively familiar with the layout of this report. It's one that we provide on a quarterly basis. So in addition to the covering report, we provide kind of numerous appendices to provide some insight as to our performance against the delivery plan. For example, the delivery status by programme, and addition some narrative around some of the key metrics related to our delivery plan dashboard as well. There is in one area in particular that might be just useful to highlight to the committee today, and that's in relation to the Home Pathways programme. So whilst the update around the market position statement was accurate at the time of writing, this is now an activity that's been deferred from the May IJB to the July IJB. So that one is slightly behind schedule, but other than that, there is nothing else that I'd like to draw the committee's attention to at this time. Obviously, this does cover quite a range of different activities. So if there are particular questions on specific projects and programmes, I'm sure between myself and colleagues, we will do our very best to answer them. And if we are unable to do so, then we can obviously commit to having that conversation with programme leads offline and getting back in touch in writing. Other than that, I think that's probably sufficient for me. Would welcome any questions or comments that anyone might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Callum. Thank you for the very thorough, very high quality report. Great deal of data, a lot of information in there. Very comprehensively produced and formatted. That's a great deal of clarity. It really helps with the transparency to see everything presented so efficiently and fully. Are there any questions on 7.1? We have a question from June.
Thank you, Chair. Callum, my question's in relation again to the health and care staffing legislation. I don't see that noted at all in the work plan, and just questioning how that will be managed within the partnership and how performance will be reported via this group. Thank you.
Alison?
I think.
Hi, thanks. Can I come in on that? Thanks, June. Yeah, we're picking that up through our workforce plan. So whilst it's not evident separately to that, it is part of delivering our workforce plan, and we're also developing a dashboard for the workforce plan as a whole. But the data that will be required to report back in terms of the Health and Social Care Staffing Act is that will be included and incorporated in that dashboard. So we'll see it through that.
Right. June.
So thanks. That seems a logical way, Alison. I'm just wondering if that's robust enough, given the requirements of the legislation and the level of preparation that's already been done. I wonder if this committee would need to have more information than that. Thank you.
So is that possible for?
Yeah, thanks, June. We'll take that back to Sandy and discuss that with Sandy and see if there's anything else that we can do in that respect. This committee does see the annual report against the workforce plan, so I'm not sure if that would suffice. But as I say, we'll have a look into that and see what else we need to do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. If that's all the questions, thank you very much, Callum. Can members approve the recommendations which are on page 134? Are we agreed on the recommendations? Yes, we are. That's great. Thank you, everyone. The next item, 8.1, there is no exempt business, which takes us to the final item, which is 9.1, the date of our next meeting, 4th of June 2024 at 10 a.m. Thank you, everyone, for contributing, for participating this morning. I think that takes us to the end of the meeting. So thank you all, and hope the rest of the day goes well for you. Many thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Cheerio.
Bye now.